This is Raceway Ministries Today. Thanks for joining us for Raceway Ministries Today. In just a moment, we'll be sharing with you the latest of what's going on in the world of Christian ministry and outreach through the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. I would like to welcome everyone to this edition of Raceway Ministries Today. I'm Roger Marsh, Director of the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, and we're glad to have you on board this afternoon. And we're going to be talking to one of our premier leaders of one of our premier raceway ministry groups out at Talladega Super Speedway. They've been a part of the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries for a long time, and if you would like more information about the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, you can visit us at racewayministries.org. That's our website, or you can go to our Facebook page, National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, and then we have a YouTube channel by the same name. And there we have posted many of our podcasts, and this one will be posted there as well. So if you go to the YouTube channel, be sure you subscribe to our channel, and that way you can get reminders of whenever we post new podcasts. Now, it's my pleasure today to be able to welcome to the podcast Billy Dickey. Billy serves as Senior Adult Pastor at Eastmont Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, but most significantly for Raceway Ministries, he's the Director of Alabama Raceway Ministries, and they work very, very hard there at the Talladega Super Speedway to make sure all the needs are met for the fans and others. And so, Billy, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you to our podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
So glad to have you here, and I know you guys are coming out of a very, very, very busy weekend. I believe you guys had ARCA, NASCAR, 2 series from NASCAR there, Xfinity and the Cup Series, and so you guys are coming out of a busy weekend. Just in general, how did it go?
It went extremely well. They're still fighting some of the COVID restrictions, and that's mainly directed from NASCAR.
Right.
It's getting a lot better in the state for us.
Well, I'm glad to hear the good news of Alabama as a state beginning to work its way through COVID, but I know NASCAR is continuing to enforce some pretty strong restrictions, and I understand it from their point of view, but it does change ministry. Ministry there is a little bit different than it used to be, isn't it?
It is. Normally before COVID, we have 8 ministry sites. In the spring, I would have 275 volunteers.
Oh, my goodness.
In the fall, I would run about 225 volunteers.
Wow.
So this previous spring race, I had 10 volunteers total.
Oh, what a difference. My goodness. Well, I know you guys, though, are postured and ready for things to get back to normal. And I'm sure when things get back to normal, you'll be prepared and ready to crank your volunteers up and get them out there doing things like they used to be done. Now, Talladega has quite a history. From what I've been able to study, I believe the Speedway was built by International Speedway Corporation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
According to what I read, it was built in 1969. And interestingly, the reason they built Talladega was to build a speedway that would be, what I heard was, a little bit faster and a little bit longer than Daytona. So Daytona at 2.5 miles, and to make it longer and faster, I understand Talladega is 2.66 miles. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, it's a huge place. It's absolutely huge. I recall being there on one occasion, and there was a car testing out on the track, and I was amazed that you could stand at one end of the track. I believe we were up at the fence at turn 4, and a car came by and whizzed around the bank curve there, and then it went through the tri-oval, and by the time it got to the other end of the speedway, I couldn't hear it. And then by the time it went down the back straightaway and heading up toward turn 3, you began to hear it again. So if a speedway is that big where you can't hear the car at the other end of the track, that's really, really big. Now, I understand it's built on an old airfield, and I remember being in the infield at one time there, and it seemed like there was part of an old airstrip there, and then I believe there's another airstrip nearby. What's the history and the background of the raceway being built on that airfield?
It is. It was a training site for pilots during World War II.
Okay.
And then after that, the Alabama National Guard had a headquarters based in that same location.
Okay.
And currently, it's a private airstrip that runs off a part of that property, and then the National Guard and some private businesses are on the remainder part of their property.
I gotcha. Okay. All right. So it's still in use. Portions of it are still in use for sure. And if I understand it correctly, the NASCAR competitors and teams are able to fly in and out of that airport?
They are. They fly into the airport there, and the track is built a private road that runs right along the airstrip, and they'll pick up the car owner or the car drivers and bring them back through turn 2. That's where it used to be the only way to get in the infield, and so now they have 3 areas. They have a turn 3 that used to have to go across the track, but they built a more modern tunnel 2 years ago. Now a tractor trailer can come and go even while they race.
Okay. Well, I remember being there in the past when that red dirt around there would be out across the track there at that entrance at turn 3. So I guess they don't have to mess with the red mud on the speedway anymore, huh?
No, they eliminated that concern for them.
Okay. Well, wonderful history there. It's a great place to go. The fans absolutely love Talladega. From what I understand, the total capacity of the place is 175,000 when you have the grandstands full, everybody in the infield and everywhere else. Grandstands hold 80,000. That's a pretty sizable crowd. So it's a wonderful facility. International Motorsports Hall of Fame is there, and I've been through it. It's a great place to visit, and they have a good gift store as well. I've been in there too. Rich history there at Talladega Super Speedway. But there's some great history there also with the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. According to what I've been able to study about the history of Raceway Ministries, Missouri pastor Frank Stark, who was one of the trailblazers for Raceway Ministries work back in the day, came there in 1982. And according to his records, it was the first worship service at Talladega for the fans. They did a bluegrass music concert on Saturday night to kind of identify their location for the fans, and then they ended up with 20 people in worship service on Sunday morning. Oddly enough, in 1989, that same preacher, Frank Stark, was given the keys to the city of Talladega. So I would assume from that he came back repeatedly after 1982 and developed some pretty good relationships with all the folks around that area. National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries also had their annual meetings there in the year 2000 and then again in 2009, and we had some great meetings. I think we stayed out at Shaco Springs and had our conference out there, and then we came into the Speedway there at Talladega for some tours and other activities. So great history for the Speedway and great history for Raceway Ministries there. How did you get involved in it, Billy?
I got involved around the year 2000. My wife was Mike Jackson's ministry assistant.
Okay.
And he found out that I enjoyed NASCAR. I grew up around it here in Montgomery. We have a short track. I think it's been in existence since '59, and I used to go there every Friday and Saturday night since I was about 6 years old. That's where Bobby and Donnie and Red Farmer and all those cut their teeth at.
Absolutely.
The original Alabama gangs.
Yeah.
And so when Mike found out about that, he invited me to come with him one weekend to Talladega. And as they'd say, the rest is history. I've just been there ever since.
Wow. Well, y'all have had some great leadership there through the years. When I first got involved in Raceway Ministries work in the late 1990s, Richard Alford was very much involved in leading the group. And then Mike Jackson also provided some great leadership there. And I got to tell you, we really appreciate you. And I know when you have that many volunteers, what'd you say, 275 volunteers?
275 spring race, because it's a 3-race weekend, and then the fall race is a 2-race weekend, so we're about 50 less for the fall.
My hat's off to you for providing such good leadership. We appreciate you guys a lot. Y'all have been one of our premier groups for a long time, and y'all know how to get it done. And I know the days that I've been out there working with y'all, believe y'all are located in 8 different campgrounds, some of them privately owned, if I'm not mistaken, but y'all have hospitality tents in each one of them, have a good number of volunteers, have good food. I've had some great sausage biscuits and cookies and good coffee out there before. Y'all have done some good music concerts and had children's activities and all kinds of things going on. Now, that, though, is in a regular year. I mean, we have to say that now. I guess we could call it pre-COVID. During those years when you've had 275 volunteers there in the spring, 200 out there in the fall, and all those activities going on, pretty different than what it is now. So what I'd like for you to describe for our folks is how have things changed. I guess the biggest change for y'all has been this spring race, although there may have been some limitations for y'all last year as well. But knowing that you've had that many volunteers and that many locations providing ministry during the pre-COVID days, what was ministry like this past race weekend for you guys? ARCA was there. I think Corey Heim was the winner for the ARCA race. Jeb Burton won the Xfinity race, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe Brad Keselowski took the Cup race.
Correct.
So, a lot of racing going on, but probably not as many fans as normal and not as much camping as normal. So what were you guys able to do? What were you not able to do that you wish you could have done? How many volunteers did you have? How'd you have them organized? Kind of paint the picture for us of how it went during this recent Talladega weekend.
For the spring race this year at Talladega, the COVID restrictions limited us extremely for the ministry sites that are held on Talladega Super Speedway property.
Okay.
My 2 private campgrounds, CNC Campground and Dove Ridge, they did ministry as normal.
Okay.
They had their worship service on Sunday morning
Good.
at 9 o'clock, and prior to that, they would cook sausage biscuits or make coffee for the campers in their area and minister to them that way. And for the children at CNC Campground, we do the Pinewood Derby cars and let them paint them and build them and race them. So those 2 sites were almost normal.
Okay.
We didn't have any limitations on gathering size. But on my track property, they wouldn't allow groups larger than 6 at any one particular area. So
oh, my goodness.
We wasn't able to set up our ministry tent sites and wasn't able to cook at any of the sites. So our only contact was just verbal, as they would either come in to get checked in or as we would just walk through the campground itself. I had 5 volunteers on the track property, so we would just kind of go through. It was 18,000 campers, so we just try to hit sections each day to let them know we were there. The probably most asked question was when we were going to come back with our ministry tent and start serving hot food and who the band was going to be and then who was going to be singing at the worship service.
Right.
So they missed us. I hope the track realized how much they missed us and get it back to normal as quick as possible.
Oh, man, I hope so, too. And I know the fans are ready for things to be back to normal. The drivers are so excited to be able to have fans back in the grandstands. And, once the whole scene gets back to some kind of normalcy, it'll be a happy day for sure. Now, if I understand you correctly, on the property there of Talladega, you were in one campground?
Right. It's what they call the South Campground.
Okay.
That starts on the back stretch and goes all the way around to turn number 2.
Okay.
So everything on that side of the track, they allowed campers and motorhome to come in starting on Wednesday.
Okay. How many campgrounds are on Talladega property and how many of them are privately owned around there?
Let's see, 6 are on Talladega property and 2 are on private property.
Okay.
We normally run North Park, which is on the opposite side of turn 3 and 4 across from the main Talladega Boulevard coming to the track.
Yeah, right.
And then we have camping on the inside at the infield. Then we have Champions Corner and then West Park C, which is the furthest campground, but they serve the best food, so they get a lot of visitors coming in.
Oh, yeah.
We got the defending state barbecue champion, and he finished 3rd in nationals.
Really?
He comes out of Jackson Way, and so everybody's looking forward when he pulls his big grill behind his truck.
Oh, yeah, you bet. Yeah. So those campgrounds then were closed for this event.
Right. They were closed last year for the fall race and for this previous spring race.
Yeah. Well, I hope before we get to the fall race this year, they can get their mowers and their weed eaters out and get those things ready to go, because I know the fans will want to be there. And if you got barbecue, like you said, I may make my way down Interstate 20 and come over there and go over to that West Sea campground. That sounds pretty good. Well, now, on the private campgrounds, I have to ask this question. On those privately owned campgrounds that you mentioned, your ministry teams were up and running, you said, as normal. So were they under the jurisdiction of county restrictions, state restrictions, no restrictions? How were they able to operate?
We followed the guidelines from the state and local agency, and the governor lifted the mandate to wear a mask, and we told them, I would leave it up to them. They could either wear the mask or not, depending on how they felt, because I said, you don't know who you're coming in contact with. And most everybody still kept a pretty good social distance.
Okay.
But we probably had 18 in worship service where we'd normally have about 35 at Dove Ridge.
Okay.
And C&C had about, I think they said 30, and 50 sometimes is their high. So everybody was adjusted a little bit.
Yeah.
But at least we was able to have those 2 worship services for those campers on Sunday.
And how many volunteers did you have over there in those private campgrounds?
In the private campgrounds at Dove Ridge, that was headed up by Billy Irving. They had 8, and then Vandergarf at C&C campgrounds, I think they ended up with 10.
Okay.
And they started where we'd normally have somebody at those 2 midweek. They both set up on Friday and just did Friday, Saturday, Sunday this year, modified it a little bit.
Now, how many volunteers did you have over there in the campground on property?
I just had 5.
Okay.
Including myself.
Okay. Now, you guys normally run 275 or 200 volunteers, so you were reduced quite a bit. Did you have to turn people away from volunteers?
No, it was really harder to get them there to volunteer because most of them love their ministry so much they want to cook and interact with the fans.
Yeah.
And then when I told them the restrictions that the track had put on us, most of them, said, well, I think I just wait till the fall.
Oh,
but I had a few that was willing to come out and be flexible, so I was appreciative of that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm glad that they were willing to let you do what you did. And of course, NASCAR, from what I understand, my experience has been, they appreciate Raceway Ministries and all the different things that we do, and I know the individual tracks do. Talladega has always been very good in terms of staff relations and being able to work with them to get things done from the ministry side, so we appreciate that. How about your relationships with the staff there? Have you been able to continue relationships with them between races with COVID restrictions? Have you had any limitations or trouble relating to them?
It's gotten a little better. When it was the International Speedway Corporation, it was outstanding. A relationship, easy to work with. My contact was Russell and Patrick. Yeah. And then a couple of years back, NASCAR bought Talladega Super Speedway and had a president change. And Brian's a great guy. He loves Alabama Raceway Ministries.
Good.
But it's just a learning curve right now, because when I called Russell to see about the invocations for the races, he says, man, they've given that responsibility to somebody else. So I get that name. And now I contact a person at Daytona Super Speedway and try to set it up at Talladega. So it's a learning curve for both of us.
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll get back in the hands of the people at Talladega to make it much easier for us. But they're appreciative of what we do. I carried Miss Rachel Frank around the property a little bit, and she says she never realized Talladega was that big. So tried giving her a good tour of it, let her know what Alabama Raceway Ministry does.
Good.
And I think we're still in good graces with everybody. It's just the COVID restrictions and what they're trying to get going's just been a little up and down for everybody.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, I always like to ask this question because I think it's very revealing for our listeners, particularly if they've not been involved in Raceway Ministries work in the past. What do you perceive to be the keys to having a successful Raceway Ministries team and a successful Raceway Ministries weekend? What qualities and characteristics in relationship to the event, the staff, the volunteers, what makes it work best? What would you say are some key components?
I would say that one of the key components is having my volunteers being willing just to listen to the race fans. For the ones that's coming into the ministry sites.
Good.
And then I'd say we're willing here to pray for you if you'd like us to have prayer. And we'll give them our contact information where they can contact us after they get back to their hometown if they still want to continue to have prayer.
Good.
And I tell them, like I do my mission teams, when I go to Ukraine, Romania, or Guatemala, you have to be flexible.
Yeah.
And so if we're doing something and the Super Speedway staff comes by and says, hey, we'd prefer you not do it, I tell them we won't do it. We'll do it the way you'd like for us to do it. But being that way, not being boastful, but just having a good, pleasant tone about yourself and willing to listen is one of the big keys.
Well, I think you're right on target there. If you don't have good relationships with the staff there, you're not going to have a lot of opportunity. And so that means you definitely have to pay attention to what they allow you to do and don't try to do things on the sly. My experience has been that doesn't work very well. I love what you said about listening to the fans. You know, I've had fans before come up to me at Raceway Ministry events and wonder, what in the world are you guys all about? Why are you all here? And after you listen to them for a while and they begin to get a little confidence in the fact that you're not there to hurt them or preach to them too hard and beat them up with the Bible and that kind of thing, they'll warm up and they'll begin to talk. And if you listen very carefully, you can get a lot of ministry opportunity in there. I like what you said, too. One of the best things to do is just ask them if there's anything that you can pray with them about. I've had very few race fans turn me down for that in the past. That works really, really well. Any other key thoughts in your mind?
Just be willing to do whatever's available for you. You never know what doors the Lord open for you.
Yep.
We pass out probably close to 80,000 tracks between the spring and fall race, and 2 months down the road, we may get a letter from somebody that says they accepted the Lord as their Savior from that racing track.
Yeah.
Or we've left them our phone number and they'll call us and say, hey, I've joined this church. I appreciate y'all praying for me. So
wow.
When you get those calls or those letters, it makes all the long days and nights really worth it.
Boy, you're exactly right, Billy. And there are some long days and long nights out there at the Speedway. But when you hear that kind of impact that you make on the lives of people, it certainly does make it worthwhile. You're right. Well, listen, pointing to the future, what do you anticipate next race event's going to be like? When do y'all race again? Y'all's next event will be in September, October?
It'll be in October. It'll be the fall race. That'll be a 2-race weekend.
Okay.
The big race will be October the 3rd. And I feel like if it's not back to full capacity, I think it'll be at least 80% because both for the football schools in Alabama, the University of Alabama and Auburn University have already said that they would be full capacity at their stadium.
Good.
So I'm hoping NASCAR sees where all the large venues are opening back up to full capacity.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll follow suit or be real close to that.
Well, I hope so too. We're starting a new group. Well, we're restarting a group at Nashville Super Speedway, and their event's coming up in June. And according to what I've read, they're planning on full capacity for that event. So, hopefully in the near future, things will loosen up a little bit. So if it does loosen up for y'all's October event, I guess you're going to be busy getting things cranked up and get the machine oiled with 200 volunteers and get it all going again.
We are, and there's 2 more private campgrounds close to the track there, and I'm supposed to go up in late June, early July, and talked with both of those owners with the possibility of letting us get started in their campgrounds.
Good.
And in case COVID lingers on a little longer, that would at least give us 2 additional off-property sites where we could do full ministry.
Yeah, sure would. Wow, that would be awesome. Well, our prayer certainly will be that as things move along, things will improve with COVID. And I understand NASCAR's perspective, being very cautious and very careful and wanting to do the right thing. And I think they've handled it well so far. And as people continue to, get the vaccines, and as the herd immunity begins to gather a little bit of steam, hopefully things will open up and we'll get back to racing and get back to ministry in kind of a full-time way as time goes by. Well, Billy, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you and your leadership there with Alabama Raceway Ministries, and really enjoyed visiting with you this afternoon and listening to what went down with ministry there at Talladega a couple of weekends ago. Any final thoughts that you might have before we go?
Well, I just appreciate the prayers for our ministry, and I appreciate what National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries done. I thank Mike Jackson. He got me involved with y'all shortly after I got on board with Alabama Raceway Ministries. And I made one national convention maybe 3 years ago when we were in Tennessee. I was able to make that national convention and really enjoyed getting to meet a lot of different people, and looking forward to where we can have the meetings in person again and share the different things we do at tracks, because like here in Alabama we have a lot of different short tracks, and we have different members from Alabama Raceway Ministries involved in those on their own. And so it's just a blessing to know people's willing to share the love of the Lord, whether it's across the street or around the world or at a racetrack.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll look forward to those annual meetings hopefully opening up sometime soon. We had to do a virtual meeting this past January. We're getting ready to identify a location to have an in-person meeting as we look toward this next January, and it sure will be good to get everybody back together to hear the stories and see the smiles and the twinkle in everybody's eye, and be able to sing and worship and pray together and encourage each other. So I appreciate you being a part of it, Billy. Thank you so very much. For our listeners, we've been visiting with Billy Dickey. Billy is the senior adult pastor at Eastmont Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, also the director of Alabama Raceway Ministries, and they do a lot of good work out there at Talladega Super Speedway. Billy, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate having you on the podcast.
And thank you so much.
All right. Well, listen, for all of you out there listening to the podcast, if you need more information about the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, again, go to our website, racewayministries.org, or you can visit our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. Both of those go by the name National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. And we'll look forward to having you back for the next podcast. And meanwhile, as we all journey down the road course of life, we'll look forward to seeing you in Victory Lane. We hope you'll tune in next time as we continue to explore Christian ministry and outreach in motorsports through the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. If you'd like to learn more about the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, visit our website at racewayministries.org. Follow us on Facebook under the name National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. Check out our podcast and videos found on our National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries YouTube channel. Meanwhile, thanks for joining us for this presentation of Raceway Ministries Today.